Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering that's probably wrong and fun to talk about. I'm Leslie,
And I'm Shauna.
and today we are bringing you another deep dive into the pre-constructed decks from Magic the Gathering. This time we are looking at the Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Hopefully there'll be some showdowns in them their corrals today. Um, we're gonna tell you all about the cards in this deck, break it down for you, and give you some strategies for playing, as well as if you wait until the end, we're going to give you some tweaks. But Shauna is going to tell you a little bit about what this deck is meant to do and who our commander is. So, Shauna.
Alrighty. This is the Grand Larceny Deck. This deck is all about stealing them critters from the other side of the table and using them for yourself. So
You need
I said,
a Western drawl as
yeah,
we do this whole thing.
we could do that. We're from Alberta.
Berta.
Anyway, so Alberta. So we are going to steal our opponent's stuff and then just smack him in the face with it. Is what we're going to do in
Yeah.
this deck. So our commander is Gonti, the famous stealer of cards, canny acquisitor. Acquisitor, yeah, acquisitor. He's acquiring things for 2, a black, a green, and blue. So we've got 3 colors in this deck. 5/5, and spells you cast but don't own cost 1 less to cast. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, look at the top card of that player's library, then exile it face down. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. So even if Gonti dies, you've still got this little pile of goodies that you can play. The deck's other commander is Felix, 5 boots, an ooze rogue, who is the same cost. He's a 5/4 with menace and ward 2. And if a creature you control dealing combat damage to a player causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So that could be pretty significant when you have Gonti and him out, but we'll talk about that later.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Leslie's going to
So,
give us a little breakdown of the
yeah.
deck.
A
Yeah.
little bit of a breakdown. So when we look at the mana curve of this deck, it's an interesting one. It's not your typical, bell curve type thing. We have
Mhm.
lots in the low mana cost too. We have 16 and 3, we have 13. And then the rest of them are getting up there. So 10 at 4, we have 8 at 5, 9 at 6 plus, and then there's 3 that have an X cost, which usually are going to be better when you pay more into X, so they kind of go
Mhm.
higher on the scale. So there's quite a few big ones. However, your goal in this is really just to cast spells from other people's decks. So we'll see how that goes. As far as the colors go, this is a really multicolor heavy deck. Out of all of them, this one has the most multicolor. So there's 19, 9 colorless. Those are your artifacts. 13 blue, 9 green, and 12 black. So the colors themselves are around even, and then lots of multicolored. Card types, we have 37 creatures. Then we have, and a lot of those creatures will help you steal things, which we'll find out. We have 16 instants and sorceries, one or two enchantments, and then artifacts 7. So 38 land in this deck.
Mhm.
It's going to be a fun one to play, I think.
Yeah.
So we're going to break this down for you based on a formula that we like to follow, and Shauna's going to tell you all about that.
Yeah. So the formula that we use for building a deck, Wizard seems to use it most of the time, or kind of a variation as well. So the numbers can fluctuate a little bit from what we're telling you here today. But for ramp, it's about 15 cards you need for ramp. That's getting your mana for your spells, 15 removal, 13 card draw, 12 high impact. Those are the cards that are going to win you the game. 10 other supporting cards that help you win the game or other win conditions, and then about 35 land or so. So we're going to try to see if this deck follows that formula.
Mm-hmm. And our
Leslie, what's
first
our first?
section
Yeah.
is ramp and mana generator. So the formula calls for 15. This deck has what we figure to be around 11. The first one is Oblivion Sower. It's 6 mana cost thing, so that's kind of late in the game for ramp, but it does do kind of fun things for you. So it's a 5/8, and whenever you cast Oblivion Sower, target opponent exiles the top 4 cards of his or her library, and then you can put any number of land cards that player owns from exile onto the battlefield under your control. So you first of all get a 5/8 for 6, and you get some lands from their deck, which means that they don't have those lands to play as well, which is great. So could be good, could be bad, but it'll get you some land.
Then we have a new card, this little one called Thieving Varmint. He's a 2/1 for 1 death touch and lifelink, so they don't want to touch this guy. And you can tap him and pay 1 life and add 2 mana of any one color and spend it only to cast spells you don't own. So you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have a few of those.
Yep.
I like the 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 story text on here. After seeing what the varmint was doing with her pocket watch, Elsa wasn't sure she even wanted it back.
I love that the creature type is varmint. It's not like an a
A rat.
crazy armadillo or half rat, whatever. It's a varmint. So there we go. Varmint tribal someday,
Yeah,
maybe. Tower
maybe.
Winder is a 2 mana cost 1/1 with reach and death touch, which is going to be great to do some blocking for you if you need. But when it enters the battlefield, you get to search your library and or graveyard for card named Command Tower. Reveal it, put it into your hand, and then search your library. If you search your library this way, you get to shuffle. So it doesn't matter if it's in your library or in your graveyard, you get to go get your Command Tower.
Mm-hmm.
The only downfall, I guess, would be if you've already played it. This means nothing, but
Yeah,
yeah.
true. Then we have Kodama's Reach, good little commander deck card. It's a sorcery for 2 and a green that lets you search for up to 2 basic lands, reveal and put 1 on the battlefield and the other in your hand, then shuffle. Handy dandy.
Yep, and typical rampant growth, same thing. Search for basic, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library.
3 visits, you get to go look for a forest and put that on the battlefield. You don't have to put it on tap though, so that's nice.
Yep. And then we have our Arcane Signet. For 2, it adds 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Great little artifact to have in any deck.
Darksteel Ingo, it's an indestructible little artifact, so they can't destroy it. You can add 1 mana of any color,
Yep.
though. Yay.
Fellware Stone, same thing. 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls, though, can
Mm-hmm.
produce. So you have to kind of keep track of what your opponents can produce and when they can do that. But in the end, it usually ends up being whatever color you want.
Yeah. And then a little prismatic lens for 2. It can be any colorless mana, but you can also pay 1 and add any color to your pool.
And the best card is the Soul Ring. Everyone loves a Soul Ring. It taps for 2 colorless, and it only costs 1.
Yeah. Then we're on to our card draw section. So the formula calls for 3, and we think this deck only has about 6. However,
Calls for
you
13.
are
You
calls for
said 3.
13. Did I say 3?
Yeah, it's fine.
Wow. Okay, let's have a sip of coffee.
Sip of coffee.
Okay. There we go. So this deck has about 6, but you are stealing stuff off of the top of their deck. So you're kind of doing card draw there. So it's not maybe such a big deal, but we'll see. So we've got the first card is the Baleful Strix. It's a little 1/1 flying death toucher that we like to have for blue and a black that has, when it enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card as well. So he's a good little guy.
And then we have our Cold Eyed Selkie. This one is 1 and then 2 hybrid mana, which means you can pay either a forest or an island for that particular mana color. It has Island Walk, which means it can't be blocked as long as the defending player controls an island. So you're going to want to get in with damage on all of those blue players,
Mm-hmm.
punish them for playing blue. Anyway, that you're doing it too, so it's fine. And then whenever Cold Eye Selkie deals damage to a player, you get to then draw that many cards. So it would be a nice thing to buff this guy up if you have an opportunity to do that as well, so you can draw more cards, but at least you'll get a nice little draw every turn that you attack with it and get through. So
This is a nice little political card as well. Edric, Spymaster of Trest, has whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may draw a card. So you're giving them a little bit of incentive to attack each other rather than you, because then they can draw some cards, and it's also helpful for you so that you can draw cards. So it's pretty
Yeah.
handy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Ghostly Pilferer for two costs, it's a 2/1. And when it becomes untapped, you may pay two if you do draw a card. So you do have to pump a little bit more into it every time you want to draw a card. But paying two to draw a card is great. Whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, you get to draw a card. So if they're casting things from exile or anything like that, you can draw from that. And then you can discard a card, and Ghostly Pilferer can't be blocked this turn. So because you have to untap him for his ability to happen, you do want to try and kind of figure out a way to tap him. And so that's a good way to get in for that damage so that you can, without him dying.
Yeah. The Oran Frostfang for 3 and 2 green, a 2/6 attacking creatures you control have death touch, which is lovely. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So it could potentially be lots of cards if you get lots of little death touchers in. Woo!
Mm-hmm. Shadow Mage Infiltrator for 3, 1 blue, black is a 1/3, but it has fear. So, what is fear? Well, fear is it can't be blocked unless it's an artifact or a black creature. So,
Mhm.
again, get in for damage where you can, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card.
Yeah.
So a lot of if you get in for damage, you draw a card in this card draw, which could be a problem if you're not unable to get in for damage. Someone has something up on the battlefield like propaganda that you have to pay into as well. That could be a problem as well. So it is a little light on the card draw.
Yeah.
And until we play it, we're not sure if that stealing their stuff is going to be good enough for card draw. So you might want to
Mhm.
tweak there.
Yeah.
Next section.
The next section is removal. So the formula calls for 15, and the deck has about 10. So plus you're removing cards from them by just stealing them off of the top of their
Mm-hmm.
deck. So
It's good
there's that
removal.
removal as well. So this deck is kind of funny that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one we have is a Blade Griff prototype. It's a 3/2 flyer for 5. And when it deals combat damage to a player, so here we are again, destroy target non-land permanent of that player's choice that one of your opponents control. So, yeah, they get to pick, but you're still getting rid of something.
Yeah. Okay, Smirking Spelljacker for 5 is a 3/3. So this one has flash. It has flying. So flash means you can play it at instant speed. And when it enters the battlefield, you exile target spell an opponent controls. So that's not something that's already on the battlefield. It has to be something on the stack. It's still a spell while it's on the stack. So this is where you would, it's kind of like a counter spell. And then when it attacks, if a card is exiled with it, then you may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. So it seems like you get to like tuck it under, you put it in, you basically get to steal that spell. He's spelljacking it, and then he gets to cast it when he wants to, when he's attacking.
Kind of great for nothing.
Yeah,
That's the fun part.
free.
Alrighty, so then we have the Trigon Predator. It's a 2/3 flyer as well for 1 a green and a blue. That whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may destroy an artifact or enchantment that that player controls. So that's a really handy little guy.
Yeah. Calling Ritual for 4 is a sorcery. Destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. And then you get to add a black or a green for each permanent destroyed this way. So great way to get rid of those token decks that have a ton of things on the battlefield and you just need to do a little bit of a board wipe.
And then you can play some
Yeah,
crazy.
and it does affect your stuff as well.
Yeah. Curse of the Swine for X and 2 blue. Here's one of our X cost cards. It's a sorcery that says exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller puts a little 2/2 green boar onto the battlefield instead.
Mm-hmm. Turn their big ones into little ones. Feed the Swarm for 2 is a sorcery. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to the permanent's converted mana cost. So it is a little bit of a punishment to you, but that's what you get for playing a 2 mana removal spell.
Yep. Heartless Conscription. I think this is a new card. It's for 6 and 2 black, a big sorcery that says exile all creatures. For each card exiled this way, you may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. And then you have to exile this sorcery. So that's
I
okay. You
love that. I love that as a board
wipe
wipe.
the board and you get to play all that stuff,
Yeah.
including your own
Because it's
stuff.
not just exiling them, it's not just putting them in the graveyard. It's like, I'm going to take them as a new hand. So you have this like little pile of exile. So
Yeah.
awesome. Baleful Mastery for 4 is an instant, and you may pay 2 rather than pay this spell's mana cost. So it's an alternate cost. If you pay 2, if the 2 mana cost was paid, an opponent draws a card as well, and then you exile target creature or planeswalker. So, or not as well, but so it's basically saying you could pay 4 and just exile target creature. If you want to pay it for less, then you have to let somebody draw a card.
Yeah. Plasm Capture. For 2
Mm-hmm.
green and 2 blue, it's a little instant that says counter target spell. Blue likes to counter things. At the beginning of your next pre-combat main phase, add X mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool where X is that spell's converted mana cost.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Putrefy for 3. Destroy artifact or creature. Can't be regenerated. Basic staple.
Yeah.
Good
All right.
removal.
Yeah. And now we're into the high impact cards. So the formula calls for 12. The deck, in our opinion, only has about 6. These are the cards that are going to win you the game. However, again, you're going to be stealing their good stuff. So hopefully those are the high impact cards that
Yeah.
are going to win you the game. So,
Yeah.
so Felix 5 boots, as we mentioned there up above, we if this guy is out with your commander thing happens twice, which is amazing. A 5/4 that's if a creature is dealing combat damage, you get to do that twice.
Which
Those
helps with those all those card draw deal damage too. So you'll be
exactly.
drawing double cards.
So it's just a really amazing card.
Yeah. So
Plus, he's
that will
hard to
boost
get
up
rid
some
of.
of those things. Exactly. It's a good one. Brain Stealing Dragon. We always need a dragon. For 5 and 2 black, he's a 6/6. He's got flying and he's got lots of text on him. So let me tell you what it
Yeah.
says. At the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of each opponent's library. You may play those cards for as long as they remain in exile. If you cast a spell this way, you may spend mana as though it was any color, which is standard. Whenever a non-land permanent an opponent owns enters the battlefield under your control, they lose life equal to its mana value. So not only are you stealing their spells at the beginning of each turn, they are losing life when you play them. So you can strategically decide whose spells you're going to play based on that as well.
Oh, it's going to hurt them a lot.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so Dazzling Sphinx, it's a 4/5 flyer for 5, which is pretty good. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery, and you may cast that without paying its mana cost. Then that player puts the exiled cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom of their library in a random order. So, yeah, you're just digging through their deck on their behalf, stealing their good instant and sorcery. Maybe do it twice if you have your big guy out. Who knows?
Why
It's
not, right?
kind of crazy. Plus, it's a 4/5 flyer. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So Oraki Soul Reaver for 6, he's a 5/4. He does have Ninjutsu 4, which
Mhm.
means that if you get in with an unblocked attacker, then you can pay 4 and just kind of switch this guy in there for it.
Mhm.
Which is kind of a nice way to cheat him out. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you get to create a treasure token and manifest the top card of that player's library. So again, you're stealing something, it goes face down, they don't know what it is, you get to cast it whenever you want. It's being cast from somewhere other than your hand, which helps all of those things. So this guy's going to do lots for you and he can be snuck in for free. Should be.
Yeah. 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 Sage of the Beyond, a 5/5 flyer for 7. However, spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 2 less to cast, so that is amazing.
Hmm.
It also has Foretell, which is where you can pay 2 and put it in exile, and then you pay only 5 later on to actually play it. So it breaks it down into 2 turns that you play it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Get him out a little earlier.
Yep.
Silent Blade Oni for 3, 2 blue, and 2 black. He's going to be hard to play,
Mhm.
but he's a 6/5 with ninjutsu, so you're going to cheat him
Yep.
out, hopefully, 4 and 1 black and 1 blue. And whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you get to look at the player's hand, which is knowledge, and you can cast spells from among those cards without paying their mana cost. So it's just like, hey, what do you got that's good over there, Mr. Taylor?
Dinosaur.
Uh, so we have people in our play
Yes.
groups. So yeah, I mean not a lot of high impact cards, but the ones that are in there that are pretty good.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. All right. So then we go to the other cards that are on theme, supporting cards that help you win the game. So this the formula calls for 10. This deck has 28 because it's all that getting in there for
mhm.
damage and stealing their stuff. So our first one we have is Kazur, the Ruthless Stalker, that does have partner on it. It partners with Yukima, which you will see later on. I should have put them actually beside each other, but that's okay. Um, it has whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, and Leslie's doing it for us. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you put a 1/1 counter on that creature. So your stuff is getting big. Chances of it getting in there is pretty good. And
Mhm.
then you have Leslie's going to talk about.
Yukima, Stalking Shadow. So again, he's partner with. So he's 3 mana, cost 2/2. When you play him, you get to go search for Kazar. So he has that he can't be blocked, which is fantastic. And then when he leaves the battlefield, it deals X damage to target player, and you gain X life, where X is its power. So if you use these two together, when it deals combat damage, you put the 1/1 counter on him. You just keep going back and forth, and they work really well together.
Yeah, a whale wolf, which is just crazy. Diluvian Primordial, it's a 5/5 flyer for the 7. When it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you may cast up to one target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. What? And then if a spell cast this way, we put it in the graveyard, you have to exile it. But still, it's
Yeah,
crazy. Steal their good instants and sorcery
yeah.
for each opponent.
And then we have Doc Urlock Grizzle Genius. Now, I love this card for so many reasons. First of all, look at him. Look at him. He
Oh.
is so cute and like smart and wizened. I just love the art on this card.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, he is a 2/2, or he's a 2/3 bear, which
Yes.
normally, if
So
you've been around
special.
Magic for a while, 2/2s, that they're called bears because most bears are 2/2s for 2. This is a 2/3 for 2, which makes him even that much better. Plus, he has stuff on him. So spells cost you cast from your graveyard or from exile cost 2 less to cast. So that'll help with some of that ramp and making things cost less. And then plotting cards, which we haven't talked about plotting yet, but we will, from your hand cost 2 less to cast. So lots of fun stuff with this bear. He is a good bear.
I was just gonna get what plot how plotting works. So you pay the plot cost of a spell to exile it face up,
Oh,
and then you cast it for free later on.
yeah.
That's what
So it's
plotting
basically
is.
like, hey, I'm going to put this over here in exile, but you're going to know what it is and what's coming. And most of them are like, I don't want that to happen. So now you've got something held over their head basically.
Yeah, yeah. Fallen Shinobi. It is a zombie ninja, 5/4 for 5. However, it does have that ninjutsu thing, which is if you have a creature that's being unblocked, you can pay this and pop this guy in instead. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top 2 cards of their library until end of turn. You may play those cards without paying their mana cost.
Mhm.
2 cards.
It's all
potentially
good.
4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then the other Gonti, the Lord of Luxury, does a lot the same as what your Commander Gonti does. So 4, he's a 2/3. He has Death Touch, which is lovely in and of itself. But when he enters the battlefield, you get to look at the top 4 cards of your target opponent's library, exile one of them face down, and then put the rest on the bottom of their library in random order. You can cast that card as long as it remains in exile, blah, 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 blah. So, um, basically, you're doing the same thing, but you only get to have one card out of it, whereas your commander does, I think, all of the cards.
Alrighty, and then we have Hostage Taker for 2/3. This guy is a human pirate, 2 and a blue and a black. When it enters the battlefield, you get to exile a target artifact or creature from somewhere on the battlefield, and then you can cast it as long as you have Hostage
Mm-hmm.
Taker still with you. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect for this deck.
And Nashi, Moonsage Scion for 3. He's a 3/2, another ninjutsu out into the battlefield. So you are going to need some stuff that either is unblockable or isn't blocked. And whenever he deals combat damage, or she deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of each player's library. Until the end of turn, you may cast one of those cards. And mana anytime.
And you can pay life equal to its mana value
Yes. Yeah.
if you want. Nice. A Savvy Trader. It's a 3/3 human citizen. I believe it's a new card for 3 and a green. When it enters the battlefield, you exile a target permanent card from your graveyard. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 1 less to cast.
Mm-hmm.
So that. Ooh.
Yeah. Silhana, the Ledge Walker, loves to live life on the edge. Is a 1/1 elf rogue for 2, has hexproof, and can't be blocked except by creatures with flying.
Hmm. So there's a little one you can be getting in and then do your ninjutsu instead. It's
Mm-hmm,
kind of fun.
exactly.
And then we have the
What is this
mimeoplasm.
thing?
Huh?
What is this thing?
Yeah, what is this thing? It's weird. It's got a dinosaur head, and I don't know. It's an ooze. As it enters the battlefield, you may exile 2 creature cards from graveyards, and if you do, this enters the battlefield as a copy of one of those cards with a number of additional +1 counters on it equal to the power of the other card. What?
What?
That could be crazy. You might not have any targets that are any good, so
Yeah.
that's the reason why it's not in the high impact, but it could be potentially high impact.
Yeah, we try to save high impact for sure things.
Yeah.
So Thief of Sanity is a 3 mana cost 2/2. When it deals combat damage to a player, you get to look at the top 3 cards of that player's library, exile one of them face down, and put the rest into their graveyard so they don't even get them back on the bottom of
Mm,
their deck. And you may cast that card for as long as it remains in exile. So again, a lot of steel and play it from exile.
yeah. And here's a weird card called Thieving Amalgam. It's an ape snake. It's a 6/7 for 5 and 2 black. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you manifest the top card of that player's library. So you
So
stick
the
the,
thing they would have drawn.
yeah, it's really not very nice.
I love it.
And yeah, so then for manifest, you put it on the battlefield face down, and then you can turn it up for its mana cost if it's a creature. Whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life and you gain 2 life.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal
This
your
one
stuff and trade
arguably
you.
could be in the high
So
impact just
it
because
could.
it's a big, big thing and it does so much for you, and you are going to have stuff that they don't control. So, or that
They put,
from them.
yeah, they need to get rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Thieving Skydiver for 2 is a 2/1. It has a kicker cost, which I'll get to in a second. So flying, and whenever Thieving Skydiver enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, gain control of target artifact with a mana value X or less. If the artifact is an equipment, attach it to Thieving Skydiver. So this is just a nice way, if there is something on the battlefield that's an artifact that you want to steal, you can look at however much mana cost is and you pay X, so that amount of mana, and then you can basically steal it from the battlefield. If it happens to be an equipment, you get to attach it right away, so you don't even have to play the equip cost. So that's fun.
Yeah. We've got a little unblockable dude. It's always nice to have a Triton Shore Stalker. It's a little Merfolk Rogue that can't be blocked out. A little 1/1 for one. So there's your getting in for damage and doing all the things
Yeah.
for one.
Slither Bay Blade does the same thing. It's a 1/2 for one, can't be blocked.
Yeah. Then Void Attendant, it is a 2/3 strange Eldrazi processor for 2 and a green that you can pay 1 and a green and put a card an opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to exile stuff. Put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion token onto the battlefield, and you get to make some mana. So I guess it's kind of ramp. So it could have been up in the ramp part, but it's also doing that whole exiling graveyard shenanigan stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And Whirler Rogue, of course, Thopters are another way with flying that you can get in for damage without them doing it and then change them into your ninjutsu things. So it's a 2/2 for 4, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to create 2 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. You can also then tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, and target creature can't be blocked this turn. So
Mhm.
it's another way to just kind of save them off to the side and tap them to make something either big, really unblockable, or just anything unblockable so you can ninjutsu.
Yeah. Then this Arcane Heist, I believe this is a new card too, maybe. It's for 2 and 2 blue. It's a sorcery. It might not be.
It
That
is,
says,
yeah.
yeah, okay. You may cast target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put in the graveyard, you exile it. But you might have that exiling and bringing it back thing. Anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
Cipher, you can exile this spell encoded on a creature you control. And whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, its controller may cast a copy of the encoded card without paying its mana cost. So that's a better way to do this because you could put it onto one of your creatures that's unblockable. You get in, and then you get to do this all the time
Yes.
if that creature is doing damage. So playing that in a little bit different way might be the better way to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think you get to cast it and then you cipher it. So you get it the first time and then it attaches to something hopefully
Oh, I
unblockable.
see.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you may exile. Oh, I see.
And then
Okay.
you get to keep copying it over and over
Pardon
again, which is
me. That's how
fantastic.
Cypher works. Okay.
That's okay. That's why we're a team, man. That's why we're a team. Extract Brain. This is another X mana cost card
Mhm.
for X and a blue and a black. Target opponent chooses X cards from their hand. Look at those cards, and you may cast spells from among them without paying their mana cost. So this is where you're going to be like, "Hey, Shauna, how many cards do you have in your hand right now?" So when you
Exactly.
hear people asking you those questions, it's
Yeah.
usually because they will benefit based on how many cards you have.
Yeah.
So
Definitely. Then we have Predator's Hour. I love the art on this creature or the sorcery. Sorry, it's a sorcery for 1 and a black. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain menace, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of their library face down. You may look at and play that card for as long as it remains exiled. It may spend mana, so it's mana of any color. Yeah, so you're going to steal some stuff with this card too.
yep. And surprise, stolen goods is going to
Yeah.
allow you to steal stuff. So for 4, it is target opponent exile cards from the top of their library until he or she exiles a non-land card. Until the end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So it's basically anything except a land you can cast.
Nice. Villainous Wealth, you have to have this card in this deck as well. It's another X cost. Target opponent exiles the top X cards of their library. You may cast any number of spells with converted mana cost X or less without paying for them.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So,
and that's the key with like the last card and this card, like without paying their mana cost is so good because
mhm.
otherwise you'll never be able to pay for all the stuff you're stealing.
Yeah.
Siphon Insight for 2. Look at the top card of target opponent's library, exile one of them face down, put the other at the bottom of the opponent's library. You can look at and play the exile card for as long as it remains in exile, and of course you can spend mana as if it was any color. This one also has flashback for 3, so you can pay 1 more, and when it's in your graveyard you can just cast it again when you need. So fun.
It's a very annoying card in standard, even still.
Yep.
Chaos Wand. This is a card that has driven me crazy in the past. It's a 3 cost little artifact that says you can pay 4 and tap it. Target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery. You can cast that card without paying for it. Then you put those on the rest of them on the bottom of that player's library. It causes chaos.
Chaos.
Deal.
Cunning Rhetoric for 3. It's an enchantment, so it's going to stay on the battlefield, and then whenever an opponent attacks you or one or more of your planeswalkers that you control, you get to exile the top of that player's library and play that card for as long as it remains in exile. So it's like, hey, come at me, bro. I'm going to steal your stuff.
Then we have another enchantment, Mind's Dilation for 5 and 2 blue, a lovely blue enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, that player exiles the top card of their library. And if it's non-land, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. That is insane. Yep. But again, could be just a land, so you don't know. But yeah, you're stealing their stuff.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, Dream Thief's Bandana for 2. It's an equipment. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you get to look at the top card of their library. Of course, you're going to exile it face down, so you're going to put it somewhere in your little exile hand. And as long as it remains in exile, guess what? You get to cast it with paying mana of any type. And it only has a +1 equip cost. So again, get in with those flyers or those things that are hard to block with that and just keep stealing their stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
As for land in this deck, there's 34. Our formula recommends 34. It has 38. We're not going to go through all of the lands, but this is also a great way to tweak. Sometimes there is more land than you need. We always recommend play it a couple times first and then decide how you want to tweak it. If you find you're getting too much land all the time, then that's where you can start. We believe that Wizards does that on purpose so that you can make it your own deck. And with that, Shauna, what do we do next?
Well, we're on to the tweaks. So a couple of the tweaks are actually some lands that help you with that. So the Creeping Tar Pit enters tapped. It's a blue and a black, but you can pay 3 and make this land into a unblockable 3/2 elemental. So that's kind of handy.
Mm-hmm. And the other one that was not in this land, in this deck, was Rogue's Passage, which allows you, it does cost some money, but it allows you to pay 4 and target creature can't be blocked this turn. So you're like, I need to get in with something. You can pay that extra 4 if you have that land on the battlefield. So it's a nice way to get in when you need to.
Yeah. And another card that's really good for this deck that didn't come with it is the 4/4 Deep Fathom Skulker. For 5 and a blue, it helps with the card draw because it whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. So you could be 3 or 4 or whatever number of creatures, and you can pay 4 and a target creature can't be blocked. So it's trying to guarantee that you do get in with one of your creatures. So
because again, card draw is key.
Yeah.
Deluxe Dragster for 5. This is a nice little vehicle that might help you out with some of those same things. It can't be blocked except by vehicles. So the possibility of them having vehicles is there, but very slim. There's not a lot of people that play with vehicles in Commander. So whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may cast a target instant or sorcery spell from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost, so free. And if the spell would be put into the graveyard, you exile it instead. So it just goes into exile and they can't cast it again. It only has crew 2. So how vehicles work is basically you just tap 2 power among creatures you control, and then that means that you can use that now as a creature. Your Deluxe Dragster is now a 4/3 creature. So
very cool. Then we've got a couple of planeswalkers. We were thinking Tasha would be awesome. Tasha the Witch Queen would be awesome for this deck. She's 3 and a blue and a black for loyalty planeswalker that says whenever you cast a spell you don't own, lots, you're going to create a 3/3 black demon creature token. Her +1 is draw a card, and then for each opponent, you exile up to one target instant or sorcery from their graveyard, and you put a page counter on it. And then you can do her -3, which says you may cast a spell from among cards in exile with page counters on them without paying its mana cost.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah,
Crazy.
good. I love planeswalkers with static abilities.
Yeah.
And then we also thought maybe Ashiok, Sculptor of Fears, might be a good one. He's a 6 mana cost planeswalker with 4 loyalty, but he allows you to +2 him to draw a card for each, and then each player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. So again, helping with your card draw, which is needed in this deck. You can -5 him and put a target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield. So you're stealing, so it's on theme.
Mhm.
Plus, if you -11, you get him up that high, you can gain control of all creatures target opponent controls. So don't tell people what he does until they ask. Because he won't stay alive after that.
You're so mean. Oh. Then we were thinking the Wandering Archaic might be really fun to play in this deck. It's a 4/4 for 5 colorless. It's an avatar. Whenever an opponent casts a instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2, and if they don't, you get to copy that spell and choose new targets for it. So it's a great way to kind of steal their stuff. It also flips over. You can play it as a sorcery instead, which is explore the vast lands for 3. So you have to choose between these two things. But each player looks at the top 5 cards of their library, reveals a land and or instant or sorcery from among them, then puts the cards they revealed this way into their hand and the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. And each player gains 3 life. So it's just kind of a let's do some steely shenanigans stuff kind of card that might be fun to add to this deck.
Yeah. Mnemonic Betrayal for 3 is a sorcery. You get to exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. Then
What?
you may cast those cards this turn, and you may spend mana as though it was mana of any type to cast those spells. At the beginning of the next end step, if any of those cards remain exiled, return them to their owner's graveyard. So for one turn, you play this, and then you just get to grab everyone's graveyard and cast as many spells as you want from it. You do have to have the mana to pay it, but it would be a great way to just grab things from their graveyards instead of from the top of their libraries.
Talent of the Telepath. It's for 2 and 2 blue. A little sorcery that says target opponent reveals the top 7 cards of his or her library. You may cast an instant or sorcery from among them without paying for it, and then that player puts the rest into their graveyard. Spell Mastery is if there are 2 or more instant or sorcery cards in your graveyard, you may cast up to 2 revealed instants and sorceries from theirs instead, or their top of their deck instead.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. And you can't have a steely deck, steely,
Yeah.
a theft deck without the Agent of Treachery. He is a bit expensive. He costs 7 for a 2/3, but when he enters the battlefield, you get to gain control of target permanent. Then at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, you get to draw 3 cards, which is going to be a thing in this game. And drawing 3 cards is great. So again, we're a
Yeah.
little light on card draw. I kind of think this is a must add if you have it in this deck.
Mm-hmm. Arvinox, the Mind Flail. It's a 9/9 horror for 4 and 3 black. So it's going to be tough to get out. However, um, it isn't a creature unless you control 3 or more permanents you don't own.
Which you will.
That's going to be you're going to be doing that. And at the beginning of your end step, you exile the bottom card of each opponent's library face down. For as long as those cards remain exiled, you may look at them and cast them and spend any sort of mana. So you're stealing a lot of stuff
Yeah.
with this guy.
Stealing from the
So
bottom this time instead of the
yeah,
top, which might be
yeah,
fun. Another card we thought might be good is an X mana cost, Blue Sun's Twilight for 2 and X. You just get to gain control of target creature with a mana value X or less. If X is 5 or more, you create a token that's a copy of that. So just a reminder that that legendary rule applies. So if you're going to steal something that is legendary, you won't get to keep the copy as well. So just think of that when you're deciding what to steal. But you're stealing it from their battlefield instead, and you get 2 of them. So that might be fun.
And if you're a mean player like Leslie, you'll play Emrakul the World Anew. If you have this 12/12 for 12, when you cast this spell, gain control of all creatures a target player controls,
Mm-hmm.
and flying protection from spells and from permanents ever cast this turn. So that, yeah. And when it leaves the battlefield, you sacrifice all creatures.
Yeah. So they don't even
Madness
get them
cost
back.
on here, though, is you can discard this card and only pay 6 for it. So,
So if you have something that's like discard a card, then now you
yeah,
can just
yeah.
play it. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything in this deck, but you never know. An opponent might make you discard something too.
Yeah.
So, alrighty.
Mass manipulation kind of does the same thing. It does cost 4 blue plus X, and then you get to gain control of X target creatures and or planeswalkers. So
Yeah.
you do have to, like, if you pay 6, then that's 3 and 3 for X. So you would get 3 of them. But if you have enough mana to pump into this, you can steal a bunch of stuff from their battlefields.
Yeah. Entrancing Melody, a similar sort of card, a sorcery. You pay 1 X and 2 blue and gain control of target creature with converted mana cost X. So whatever that X is the one you get to steal.
Mm-hmm. And then another one that might be fun is a 9 mana cost sorcery. It's Expropriate. It has Council's Dilemma. Starting with you, each player votes for a time or money. For each time vote, you get to take an extra turn after this one. And for each money vote, you get to choose a permanent owned by the voter and gain control of it. So, are they going to give you some extra turns, or are they going to let you steal their stuff and then you have to exile Expropriate? So, lots of options there for tweaks. Of course, we don't recommend putting all of them in. You want to play, decide what parts of it you like, where you want to tweak, but those might be some options for you. Of course, we would really love to know how
Mm-hmm.
or and what you would do, but sorry, I just kind of went into that.
That's okay. So thanks for watching. Feel free to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'd love to hear, like Leslie said, hear what you would do with this deck to tweak it. There's lots of interesting things going on there. So that's it for this time. We'll see you next time. And in the meantime,
Tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. Bye, guys.
bye everyone.